Welcome back to the Blue Faith Podcast. And today we're in chapter 11 of Daniel. In Amir's book, Discovering Daniel, he titles this chapter The Long Journey to the Antichrist. Now, there's really no getting around this chapter. It's a lot of history. It starts with Persia, which is modern day Iran. And like Amir, I do believe that we're the terminal generation, at the last generation of the church age, which has lasted almost 2,000 years. I do believe that the rapture of this final group is imminent, meaning that it can happen at any time. There's a doctrine around that. It's called the doctrine of imminency. The accuracy of this chapter is almost spooky, so much so that a large number of people believe it was written after the events had actually unfolded. Now, I assure you, I do not. Recall the empires that the Jews were occupied. You had the Assyrian Empire. Once Israel was a unified kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon. They were later divided into a northern and a southern kingdom. The Assyrians were northeast of Israel, and they were a violent people. When Jonah was told to go preach to Nineveh, he ran the other direction. That's still swallowed up by a well story. King Tilgath-Pileser carried off the Jews from the northern kingdom in 722 BC, followed by King Sennacherib, who tried to take the southern kingdom but lost 175,000 troops after Hezekiah prayed. Now, the Babylonian Empire in 612 BC, King Nabopolassar destroyed Nineveh. And after the generation that Jonah convinced to repent, and then Nebuchadnezzar finished the Assyrians in 605 BC in the Battle of Carchemish. Now, we will be back up to chapter 10 just for a little bit. I'm going to back up there with the angel telling Daniel where and what he was going to fight. In Daniel chapter 10, verses 20 through 11, verse 1, he says, "Do you know why I've come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I've gone forth, indeed, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds me against these except Michael, your prince. Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him." The spiritual princes of Persia and Greece were fighting against Michael, the chief prince of Israel. The angel strengthened and supported Darius as part of God's punishment to Babylon. Perhaps the angel helped to ensure that Belshazzar and his compatriots were drunk when Cyrus and Darius invaded. The bottom line is God sees his people and he takes care of them. The Medes were originally allies of Nabopolassar in Babylon, but after their defeat, the Medes teamed up with Persia. This alliance eventually just became the Persians. In Daniel 11:2, it says, "And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. But by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up against all the realm of Greece." Now, these 4 kings can be seen in history. Cambyses, who served from 529 to 522 BC. Pseudo-Smyrtus, who served from 522 BC to 521 BC, only had a year. Darius I, Hystapus, 521 to 486 BC, and then Xerxes I, 486 to 465 BC. Now, Xerxes' wife Vashti publicly embarrassed him, and when he went looking for a new queen, he settled on a Jewish orphan named Esther. Find her in the book of Esther. Now, Xerxes was able to stir up trouble in Greece when he took control of Athens, but he couldn't hold it, and he tried again later, but was repelled. Now, the Greeks would settle the score. We saw this often in this outcome in chapter 8 when the arrogant ram was trampled by the swift and powerful Greek goat. That goat was Alexander the Great. In verse 3 and 4, it says, "Then a mighty king shall rise, who shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted even for others beside these." As always, I'm telling you, especially in chapter 11, the Bible is 100% accurate. Alexander was a powerful conqueror, but he died at a young age with no succession plan, and his kingdom was divided between 4 generals. Cassander ruled Macedonia and Greece, Lysimachus ruled Thrace, Ptolemy I ruled Egypt, and Seleucus ruled Syria. It's going to be Seleucus to the north and Ptolemy to the south that will cause Israel all their trouble. Now, this message from the angel was what he had witnessed before it had happened. Verse 11:5. "Also the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. The Seleucid and the Ptolemaic empires fought each other until they tired, and finally they formed an alliance. In verse 6, at the end of some years, they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand, but she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. Very interesting. Ptolemy II, Philadelphus of Egypt, and Antiochus II, Theos of Syria, they hated each other. But a cross-empire treaty sealed by the marriage of Ptolemy's daughter Bernice wed Antiochus. Only problem was Antiochus had a queen, Laodice. In soap opera fashion, Laodice got rid of Berenice, and mysteriously, Antiochus was killed by poison, and Laodice placed her son, Seleucus II Callinicus, on the throne. Verses 7 through 8 in Daniel. But from a branch of her roots one shall arise in his place, who shall come up with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. He shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt with their princes and their precious articles of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Her root refers to the deceased Berenice's brother, Ptolemy III Euergetes. In revenge, Ptolemy invaded Syria, killed Laodice, and made off with the spoils of war. Now Seleucus II attempted to get all of his stuff back, but fell from his horse and died, allowing Ptolemy III, the king of the south, to continue more years than the king of the north. Daniel 11, 9 through 10. Also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his sons shall stir up strife, assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. Again, extremely pinpoint accurate. After Seleucus II failed in his southern invasion, he died, and his son Seleucus III Soter took his place. But he was sickly, didn't quite live up to the military leader standard expected, so they killed him after a couple of years. And his brother Antiochus III, well, he was tough enough, and he had a gift for stirring up strife with his great military force. Verses 11 and 13, and the king of the south shall be moved with rage and go out and fight with him. When the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up. He will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. So Egypt and Syria, they continue to fight. Egypt's new leader, Ptolemy IV, was in place, and Antiochus III decided to take a shot at him with a little help from the Jews, but they will fail. In verse 14, it says, now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. So on his way back, Antiochus remembered the Jews who had helped the kings of the south. And in verses 15 and 16, so the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound and take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even in his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land, that's always Israel, specifically Jerusalem, with destruction in his power. So Antiochus wasn't strong, but he didn't want a chance fighting Egypt, so he developed another treaty based on another wedding. And in verse 17, it says, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or before him. So Antiochus gave his daughter Cleopatra I to marry Ptolemy V, 197 BC. The marriage didn't work out either, and Antiochus III moved on to hit his new target, which was Greece. And in verses 18 and 19, he says, after this he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall take many. But a ruler shall bring the reproach against him to an end, and with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him, that he should turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. In comes Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Now, this guy thought that he was a god. He was ultra violent. We met him back in chapter 8. The ram-killing goat had lost his horn. In its place grew 4 more horns, and from one of those 4 horns came a small very obnoxious, egotistical horn. That's Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Turned out to be the forerunner to the Antichrist. He was not in line for the throne, but usurped it from his young nephew. Takes us to verses 20 through 22. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably. He will seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood, they shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. Now, the Egyptians declared war on the Seleucids, but Antiochus IV turned their attack around, completely destroying them with the force of a flood. Onias III was a high priest in Israel, but Antiochus removed him and placed his brother Jason as high priest in 175 BC, but 4 years later was outbid by Menelaus. Verses 23 to 28, and after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province. He shall do what his fathers have not been able to do, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoils, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacy shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table. But it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. So one too many times for Antiochus IV, and in 168 BC, he fights his final battle against Egypt. In verses 29 through 30, at the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south. But it shall not be like the former or the latter, for ships from Cyprus shall come against him. So Antiochus went south into Egypt, but what he didn't know was that there was a contingent of Roman soldiers that were sailing in from Cyrus. The Roman consul was Gaius Popilius Lionus, who ordered Antiochus to turn around and leave. Antiochus asked for time to consider the order, but Gaius used his staff to draw a circle in the dirt around Antiochus, telling him that he could not leave the circle until he had an answer for the Roman Senate. So Antiochus did what anybody would do when completely surrounded and outnumbered. He retreated, and on his way to Syria, he took out his frustrations on Israel. Verses 30 through 35, therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortresses. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. And some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purify them, and make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. Now here's how the Jewish historian Josephus described it. For Antiochus, the unexpected conquest of the city, the looting, and the wholesale slaughter were not enough. His psychopathic tendency was exacerbated by resentment at what the siege had cost him. He tried to force the Jews to violate the traditional codes of practice by leaving their infant sons uncircumcised and sacrificing pigs on the altar. These orders were universally ignored, and Antiochus had the most prominent recusants butchered. So Antiochus stopped the Mosaic sacrifices and replaced them with the slaughter of pigs on the altar. He then erected a statue of Zeus in the temple, dedicating the temple to the Greek god. Now, 200 years before Jesus preached on the Mount of Olives, Antiochus was the abomination of desolation. If you've read the book of the Maccabees, Judas Maccabeus led an uprising against the Seleucid Empire because of the abomination. Thousands were killed, but the temple was recaptured and purified for Jewish worship. Now, up until now, the verses have been primarily about Antiochus IV Epiphanes, but in verse 36, it shifts. Started in verses 36 through 39. Then the king shall do according to his own will, who shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his fathers did not know he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortress with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge, and advance its glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. This is the Antichrist, who will come to power by speaking peace and comfort, but that's going to change. He will speak against God, and shall exalt himself above all, and the world will be duped for a moment. 2 Thessalonians 2, 9 through 12, Paul's talking to the church of Thessalonica. He says, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should all believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. There will be some opposition to this demonic leader. Many will give their lives to Christ, but when they are found, they will be executed and join the tribulation martyrs. A second group will be the Jews who flee to the mountains to escape the wrath of the Antichrist. Now, finally, there are nations who won't fully buy into this leader. Beginning in verse 40, you won't find these events in the history books because they haven't happened yet. When this new king of the north establishes his throne, there will be some who will not be ready to give up on their own power, and the battles will begin. These leaders won't realize that he carries the power of the prince of this world, and the Antichrist will overcome them all. In verses 40 through 45, it says, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand, Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also, the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and north shall trouble him. Therefore, he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, talking about Israel. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. So in this interpretation, Amir gives a disclaimer that the following is not what is, but what will be. The Antichrist and false prophets serve Satan, and Satan knows the words of Scripture better than any theologian in any seminary on the planet. He knows the tribulation will last 7 years. When it ends, he knows that Jesus is coming back. And when Jesus comes back, the Antichrist and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire, and he would be bound for 1,000 years. His only chance is to stop Jesus from taking Jerusalem. Well, this plan fits Revelation in chapter 16, verses 12 through 14, and verse 16. Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons, performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. And they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Armageddon. Now, Amir speculates that the Antichrist creates a ruse where the nations come against him in Jerusalem. The purpose is that there will be a ready army nearby when Jesus shows up. Zechariah 14, 1 through 2, behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoil will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into captivity, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Now, Satan knows that the Feast of Tabernacles, 7 years after the advent of the tribulation, Jesus the Messiah is going to return. This time, Jesus is coming back as the Revelation's Lion of Judah. The nations, having been deceived, will have no choice but to align forces with Satan and the Antichrist to battle Jesus and hosts that have returned with him. Well, the host, by the way, that's us. We all know that Satan will lose. So maybe he doesn't know more than all the theologians in the world. Revelation 19:19 through 20, verse 3. And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who marked the beast, who received the mark of the beast, and those who worshipped his image. Then two were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone, and the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse. That's the sword of truth that comes from the mouth of Jesus. And all of the birds were filled with their flesh. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, just in case there's any confusion, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up. And he set a seal on him so that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things, he must be released for a little while. Now, while the deception of the nations by the Antichrist may or may not happen, we do know that Jesus will return. The nations will be defeated. The Antichrist and the false prophet will be cast into the lake of fire, and the devil will be bound in the abyss for 1,000 years. Now, that prophecy is going to happen 100% in its fulfillment. Now, next week, we're going to wrap up Daniel's chapter 12, the final chapter. There's a couple more people to meet and a few more numbers for those of you guys that love all the numbers. I appreciate you guys going through this study. I'm actually going to be on vacation next week, so I won't be here, but I've already working on recording that one, and I'm going to have it drop on that Wednesday. So I appreciate you guys staying in to the end, and we'll see what we study next. Thanks again for joining the Blue Faith Podcast. Take care, guys.